täte, they called the girl a fraud for saying her mom served as a SEAL. Then froze solid when the unit charged. In the morning sun cast long shadows across Lincoln High School's parking lot as 17-year-old Sarah Martinez stepped out of her beat-up Honda Civic. She clutched her worn backpack tighter, knowing what awaited her inside those familiar brick walls. Another day of whispers, another day of doubt, another day of people calling her a liar. It had started 3 weeks ago during Mrs. Peterson's history class discussion about military service. When the teacher asked students to share stories about family members who served, Sarah had quietly mentioned that her mother was a Navy SEAL. The classroom fell silent. Then came the snickers. "Yeah, right." Jake Morrison had laughed from the back row. "Women can't be SEALs. Everyone knows that." Sarah's cheeks burned red. "My mom graduated from SEAL training in 2019. She's currently deployed overseas." More laughter erupted. Even Mrs. Peterson looked skeptical. "Sarah, I think you might be confused about your mother's role in the Navy. Perhaps she works with SEAL teams in some capacity." But Sarah wasn't confused. She knew exactly what her mother did, even if she couldn't talk about most of it. Maria Martinez had been one of the first women to successfully complete the grueling SEAL training program after the military opened all combat roles to women. Sarah had watched her mother push through injuries, exhaustion, and discrimination to earn her place among America's elite warriors. The problem was proving it. Sarah's mother couldn't discuss her missions or even confirm her exact role due to security clearances. The family had been taught to be vague about Maria's job, saying only that she worked for the Navy. Sarah had broken that rule in a moment of pride, and now she was paying the price. Word spread quickly through the school. By lunch, Sarah was known as the girl who makes up stories about her mom. Students would walk by her locker and make exaggerated military salutes, followed by cruel laughter. Someone had even started a social media page called Sarah's Fake SEAL Mom, with memes mocking her claim. The worst part wasn't the mockery from students. It was the disappointment in her teachers' eyes, the way they now questioned everything she said. Her credibility was destroyed over something that was completely true. Sarah's best friend Emma tried to defend her. "Why would she lie about something like that? It's not like she's bragging about her mom being famous or rich." But Jake Morrison, who had become Sarah's biggest tormentor, had an answer ready. "Because she wants attention. Her dad left when she was little, and now she's making up stories to seem special." That comment cut deep because it contained a grain of truth. Sarah's father had left when she was 7, unable to handle the stress of being married to someone in special operations. But that didn't make her mother's achievements any less real. Sarah tried to find proof. She searched through old photos, looking for anything that might convince her classmates. But all the pictures of her mother in uniform showed standard Navy dress blues or camouflage fatigues. Nothing specifically identified her as a SEAL. The few photos from training had faces blurred out for security reasons. She called her grandmother, hoping for some official document or award that might help. But her grandmother only had a folded flag from a ceremony Sarah wasn't allowed to attend, and some generic certificates that could have belonged to any sailor. The harassment escalated when Jake and his friends discovered Sarah eating lunch alone in the library. They surrounded her table, speaking in loud whispers meant for her to hear. "I heard her mom is actually just a cook on a Navy base," Jake said mockingly. "But Sarah tells everyone she's some kind of superhero." "Maybe her mom doesn't even exist," another boy added. "Has anyone actually seen her?" Sarah's hands trembled as she tried to focus on her sandwich. Her mother had been deployed for 8 months, and video calls were rare and always brief. The last time they spoke, Maria had looked exhausted and couldn't say where she was or when she might come home. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, noticed the commotion and approached the group. "Boys, you need to find somewhere else to have your conversation." After they left, Mrs. Chen sat down across from Sarah. You know, I've been a military wife for 20 years. My husband served 3 tours in Afghanistan. I know what it's like when people don't understand what our families sacrifice. Sarah looked up hopefully. Do you believe me about my mom? Mrs. Chen smiled gently. It doesn't matter what I believe, honey. What matters is that you know the truth. Sometimes that has to be enough. But it didn't feel like enough. Not when Sarah walked through the halls and heard whispered comments about the liar and attention seeker. Not when teachers looked at her with pity rather than respect. Not when she started doubting whether she should have ever said anything at all. The situation reached a breaking point during PE class. Coach Williams was discussing physical fitness requirements for different military branches. Without thinking, Sarah mentioned that her mother could do 200 push-ups without stopping. The entire class burst into laughter. Even some girls who usually stayed out of drama joined in. Come on, Sarah, said Melissa, a popular cheerleader. Just admit you made it all up. Everyone lies sometimes. It's not a big deal. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. I'm not lying. My mom really is a Navy SEAL. She's serving our country right now while you all are making jokes. Coach Williams blew his whistle. That's enough. Everyone back to your exercises. But the damage was done. Sarah spent the rest of the class period hiding in the equipment room, crying into her hands. She was tired of fighting, tired of defending the truth when no one wanted to hear it. That evening, Sarah sat in her empty house, staring at her phone. She wanted to call her mother, to beg her to somehow prove to everyone that Sarah wasn't a liar. But she knew Maria couldn't break operational security, even for her daughter's social life. Instead, she opened her laptop and began typing an email she would never send. Mom, I know you can't tell people what you really do, but it's getting really hard here. Everyone thinks I'm making you up. I'm proud of you. But sometimes I wish you had a normal job so I could prove to everyone that you're real and amazing. I miss you. Come home safe. She deleted the email without saving it. Her mother had enough to worry about without adding high school drama to the list. As Sarah got ready for bed, she made a decision. Tomorrow she would stop talking about her mother's job. She would let everyone believe what they wanted to believe. It was easier than fighting a battle she couldn't win. She had no way of knowing that in just 2 weeks, everything would change. Her mother's unit was about to receive orders that would bring them home ahead of schedule. And when they arrived, the truth would be impossible to deny. But tonight, Sarah was just a teenage girl who felt completely alone, carrying a secret that felt more like a burden than a source of pride. She fell asleep, clutching a photo of her mother in dress blues, the only proof she had of a hero that no one else believed existed. They called the girl a fraud for saying her mom served as a SEAL, then froze solid. When the unit charged, 2 weeks had passed since Sarah decided to stop defending herself. She kept her head down, spoke only when spoken to, and tried to become invisible. The constant mockery had died down to occasional whispers and eye rolls. But the damage to her reputation remained. She was sitting in chemistry class when the principal's voice crackled over the intercom. Sarah Martinez, please report to the main office immediately. Bring your belongings. The classroom fell silent. Sarah's stomach dropped. Being called to the office with your belongings usually meant suspension or worse. She gathered her books, feeling 30 pairs of eyes following her every move. Busted for lying about Mommy, Jake whispered as she passed his desk. Sarah ignored him and walked down the familiar hallway toward the main office. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had someone reported her for the SEAL story? Was there some kind of investigation? Her hands shook as she pushed open the heavy office doors. Mrs. Rodriguez, the principal's secretary, looked up with an unusual expression. Instead of the stern face Sarah expected, she saw something that looked almost like excitement mixed with nervousness. Sarah, honey, your aunt is here to pick you up, Mrs. Rodriguez said softly. There's been a development with your mother's deployment. Sarah's blood ran cold. A development could mean anything in military families. It could mean injury, death, or worse. Her throat constricted as she followed Mrs. Rodriguez toward the principal's private office. Sitting in the leather chair across from Principal Hayes was her Aunt Carmen, her mother's younger sister. Carmen was still in her nurse scrubs from the hospital, her face serious but not devastated. That was a good sign. "Carmen, what's wrong? Is Mom okay?" Carmen stood and hugged her niece. "Your mother is fine, mija. Better than fine, actually. Her unit is coming home today. Emergency redeployment." Sarah felt her knees buckle with relief. "She's coming home? Today?" Principal Hayes cleared his throat. "Sarah, your aunt has shared some information with us about your mother's service record. It appears there have been some misunderstandings here at school." Carmen reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "I wasn't supposed to show these to anyone, but your mom gave me permission this morning when she called from Germany. Their plane lands in 2 hours. She opened the envelope and spread several documents across the principal's desk. Sarah leaned forward and gasped. There were commendation letters with official Navy letterhead, photographs of her mother with other soldiers in combat gear, and most importantly, a certificate with the Navy SEAL trident prominently displayed. "Your mother graduated at the top of her SEAL training class," Carmen explained. "She's been deployed on classified missions for the past 8 months. The reason you couldn't prove it is because everything about her service is classified at the highest levels." Principal Hayes studied the documents carefully. His face grew pale as he read. "Mrs. Martinez, these are quite impressive credentials. I had no idea we had a Navy SEAL parent in our school community." Sarah stared at the papers, her eyes filling with tears. After weeks of being called a liar, seeing official proof of her mother's service felt surreal. "Why are you showing me this now? What changed?" Carmen sat back down and took Sarah's hands. "Your mom's unit was involved in a rescue operation overseas. They saved a group of American diplomats who were being held hostage. The mission was so successful that they're being brought home for a special recognition ceremony. Some of the details are going to be made public." "Recognition ceremony?" "At the school, mija, tomorrow afternoon. Your mother specifically requested that it be held here." "Where you've been struggling with people not believing you." Principal Hayes looked uncomfortable. "We've received a call from the Department of Defense. Apparently, Chief Petty Officer Martinez wants to address the student body about military service and women in combat roles." Sarah felt dizzy. Her mother was coming to school? The same mother that half the student body thought was fictional was going to speak to the entire school? "I need to make some announcements to the staff," Principal Hayes continued. "There will be security protocols, media present, and several high-ranking military officials attending. This is quite unprecedented for Lincoln High." Carmen squeezed Sarah's hand. "Your mom is proud of you for standing up for the truth even when it was difficult. She knows how hard these past few weeks have been." As they prepared to leave the office, Principal Hayes called after them. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. The staff and I should have handled the situation differently. We should have trusted you." Walking through the school hallways with her aunt, Sarah felt like she was in a dream. Students stared as they passed, no doubt wondering why she was being escorted out early. She caught sight of Jake Morrison at his locker and felt a surge of anticipation. Tomorrow would be very different. The drive to the airport felt eternal. Carmen tried to prepare Sarah for what she might see. "Your mom looks different after deployment. She's lost weight and she's been through things she can't talk about, but she's strong and she's safe." At the military terminal, Sarah waited behind a security checkpoint with dozens of other families. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and joy. Children held hand-drawn welcome home signs, and spouses paced nervously. When the plane finally appeared on the tarmac, Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. A line of soldiers in combat fatigues began descending the aircraft steps. Sarah scanned each face, looking for the woman she hadn't seen in 8 months. Then she saw her. Maria Martinez looked exactly like the warrior Sarah had always described to her classmates. Even exhausted from travel, she moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her bearing unmistakably military. When Maria spotted Sarah through the glass, her composure cracked. She quickened her pace through security processing, and within minutes, mother and daughter were wrapped in a fierce embrace. "I missed you so much, mija," Maria whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I heard about what happened at school. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you from that." Sarah buried her face in her mother's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume mixed with something foreign and distant. "I knew you were real. I always knew." Maria held her at arm's length, studying her face. "You've grown up so much, and I heard you've been very brave, standing up for what you know is true." Carmen filled Maria in on the day's events as they drove home, about the documents, about the planned school ceremony, about Principal Hayes's reaction. Maria listened quietly, her jaw tightening when she heard details about the harassment Sarah had endured. "Some of these kids need to understand what military families sacrifice," Maria said finally. "What we all sacrifice. Tomorrow will be educational for everyone involved." That evening, Sarah watched her mother prepare her dress blue uniform for the school ceremony. Each ribbon and medal told a story that Sarah was finally allowed to hear. The Bronze Star for valor in combat, the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for leadership under fire, the Combat Action Ribbon for direct engagement with enemy forces. "Mom, what really happened over there? Why are they making such a big deal about your mission?" Maria sat on the edge of Sarah's bed, her expression serious. "I can't give you details, baby. But what I can tell you is that 23 American civilians are alive today because my team did our job. Their families get to have them home for Christmas because we were trained well and worked together." Sarah felt a surge of pride so strong it almost hurt. "I want everyone at school to know what you really do, not just that you're a SEAL, but that you save people." "Tomorrow they will," Maria promised. "But more importantly, they'll understand that when someone tells them something that seems impossible, sometimes it's just because they don't know what's possible." As Sarah drifted off to sleep that night, she thought about Jake Morrison and all the other students who had spent weeks mocking her. She wondered what their faces would look like tomorrow when her fake mother walked into their school surrounded by a security detail and Navy officials. She fell asleep smiling for the first time in weeks, knowing that truth really could triumph over disbelief. Tomorrow would bring vindication, but more than that, it would bring understanding. Her classmates were about to learn that heroes don't always look like what you expect, and sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones that are completely true. They called the girl a fraud for saying her mom served as a SEAL, then froze solid when the unit charged. In the morning of the ceremony arrived with unusual activity at Lincoln High School. Sarah noticed the changes immediately as her mother drove through the parking lot. Military vehicles were positioned near the main entrance, and men in dress uniforms were setting up security checkpoints. "Nervous?" Maria asked, adjusting her service ribbons one final time. "A little," Sarah admitted. "What if people still don't believe it? What if they think this is all some elaborate setup?" Maria smiled and squeezed her daughter's hand. "Trust me, mija. After today, nobody will question your honesty again." As they approached the school entrance, Sarah saw her classmates gathering in confused clusters. Students pointed at the military presence, whispering among themselves. She spotted Jake Morrison near the flagpole, looking puzzled as he watched uniformed personnel moving equipment into the building. "Sarah!" Emma rushed over, her eyes wide with excitement. "What's going on? There are soldiers everywhere. And Mrs. Rodriguez said there's some special assembly about military service." Before Sarah could respond, Principal Hayes appeared with a Navy officer Sarah didn't recognize. The officer's uniform displayed numerous ribbons and insignia that marked him as high-ranking. "Chief Martinez," the officer said, extending his hand to Sarah's mother. "Commander Richards, it's an honor to escort you today. The students are assembled in the gymnasium." As they walked through the hallways, Sarah noticed how her classmates stared. Students who had mocked her for weeks now watched in stunned silence as she walked alongside her mother and a Navy commander. The whispers followed them, but now they carried a very different tone. "Is that really Sarah's mom? She's actually in the military? Look at all those medals." Jake Morrison pressed against his locker as they passed, his mouth hanging open. Sarah caught his eye and gave him a small wave. His face turned bright red. The gymnasium had been transformed. A small stage was set up with American and Navy flags, and rows of chairs faced a podium. The entire student body was seated in the bleachers, their usual chatter replaced by curious murmurs. Principal Hayes took the microphone first. "Students and faculty, we have the extraordinary honor today of hosting Chief Petty Officer Maria Martinez of the United States Navy SEALs." A gasp rippled through the gymnasium. Sarah saw heads turning in her direction, eyes wide with recognition and shock. "Chief Martinez has recently returned from a classified deployment where her unit conducted a successful rescue operation, saving the lives of 23 American civilians held hostage overseas." The murmurs grew louder. Students who had spent weeks calling Sarah a liar now sat in stunned silence as the truth unfolded before them. Commander Richards approached the podium next. "Before we hear from Chief Martinez, I want to address something that has come to our attention. It seems that some students have questioned whether women can serve as Navy SEALs." Jake Morrison sank lower in his seat, clearly recognizing where this was headed. Chief Martinez was part of the first class of women to complete SEAL training after all combat positions were open to qualified female personnel. She graduated second in her class and has since completed 3 combat deployments with distinction. Sarah watched her classmates' faces transform. The skepticism melted away, replaced by awe and embarrassment. Some students glanced at her with newfound respect, while others looked ashamed of their previous behavior. When Maria stepped up to the microphone, the gymnasium fell completely silent. She stood with perfect military bearing, her presence commanding attention from every person in the room. "Students of Lincoln High," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the space. "3 weeks ago, my daughter told her classmates that her mother was a Navy SEAL. Many of you chose not to believe her." The silence became deafening. Sarah could see students shifting uncomfortably, particularly those who had been most vocal in their mockery. "I understand why it seemed impossible. Women in combat roles is still relatively new. Navy SEALs are portrayed in movies as superhuman men who can do anything. The idea of a regular mom from your community being part of that elite force probably seemed like fantasy." Maria paused, scanning the audience. "But here's what I want you to understand about my daughter. When everyone told her she was lying, when teachers looked at her with doubt, when classmates mocked her in the hallways, she never once backed down from the truth. That kind of courage is what we look for in special operations." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her mother's words carried pride and validation that made weeks of harassment seem worthwhile. "Some of you created social media pages mocking Sarah's claims. Others whispered cruel jokes about her family. You turned a young woman's pride in her mother's service into a source of shame and isolation." The gymnasium remained dead silent. Sarah could see some students looking down at their hands, unable to meet her mother's steady gaze. But Sarah never stopped defending the truth, even when it cost her friendships and credibility. That's the kind of character that makes someone special operations material. Maria gestured toward the back of the gymnasium, where more uniformed personnel had quietly entered. I'd like you to meet some of my teammates. Sarah turned to see 6 other Navy personnel walking down the center aisle. 3 men and 3 women, all wearing the distinctive Navy SEAL Trident pin. They moved with the same confident bearing as her mother, their presence filling the space with unmistakable authority. The students in the bleachers sat mesmerized as the SEAL team arranged themselves on the stage. These weren't movie characters or fictional heroes. They were real people who had chosen to dedicate their lives to protecting others. "This is Petty Officer Johnson," Maria said, indicating a woman who looked barely older than some of the students. "She's an explosives expert who joined the Navy straight from a small town in Kansas." She moved down the line, introducing each team member. A former college football player turned combat medic, a computer programmer who became an intelligence specialist, a single mother who completed SEAL training while her ex-husband said she was abandoning their child. "We're not fictional characters," Maria continued. "We're regular people who chose extraordinary service. Some of us have children in schools just like this one. Some of us struggle with the same challenges your families face." Jake Morrison raised his hand tentatively. Maria nodded for him to speak. "Ma'am, I was one of the students who didn't believe Sarah. I said some pretty awful things." His voice cracked with emotion. "I'm really sorry." Maria studied him for a moment. "What's your name, son?" "Jake Morrison, ma'am." "Jake, apologies are important, but they're just the beginning. The real question is what you're going to do differently going forward. When someone tells you something that challenges what you think you know, will you listen with respect, or will you choose mockery?" Jake nodded vigorously. "I'll listen, ma'am, and I'll make sure other people do too." Other students began raising their hands, wanting to apologize or ask questions. Sarah watched the transformation happening in real time. Her classmates were seeing her not as the weird girl who told impossible stories, but as the daughter of a genuine hero. Mrs. Peterson, her history teacher, stood up. "Chief Martinez, I owe Sarah an apology as well. As an educator, I should have found a way to verify her claims rather than dismissing them." Maria nodded gracefully. "Sometimes the truth requires more investigation than we initially realize. The important thing is recognizing when we've made a mistake and learning from it." After the formal presentation ended, students were allowed to approach the stage to meet the SEAL team. Sarah watched in amazement as classmates who had tormented her now lined up eagerly to shake her mother's hand and thank her for her service. Emma grabbed Sarah's arm. "I can't believe you've been dealing with this alone. Your mom is incredible." "She's always been incredible," Sarah replied. "People just couldn't see it." Jake Morrison approached nervously, his usual swagger completely absent. "Sarah, I know saying sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I really am sorry. I was a jerk, and I made school miserable for you." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. "Jake, you turned my life into hell for 3 weeks because you couldn't imagine that women could do something extraordinary. I hope you remember that feeling the next time you want to tear someone down." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I will. I promise." As the event concluded and students filed out of the gymnasium, Sarah stood with her mother and aunt. The weight of vindication felt strange after weeks of isolation and doubt. "How does it feel?" Carmen asked. "Weird," Sarah admitted. "I'm happy everyone knows the truth now, but I'm also kind of angry that it took all this to make people listen to me." Maria put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "That anger is valid, mija, but channel it into something positive. Use it to become someone who listens when others tell difficult truths. Use it to become someone who stands up for people when they're not believed." As they walked toward the parking lot, Principal Hayes approached one final time. "Chief Martinez, Sarah, I want you to know that we're implementing new policies about how we handle situations like this. No student should have to endure what Sarah went through." Maria shook his hand. "That's good to hear, sir." But the real change has to come from teaching young people to think before they judge, to listen before they dismiss, and to consider that the impossible might just be something they haven't experienced yet. Driving home that afternoon, Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, vindication, and pride competed with lingering hurt from the weeks of harassment. But as she watched her mother navigate the familiar streets of their neighborhood, she realized something important. Her mother had always been extraordinary, SEAL or no SEAL. The uniform and medals hadn't changed who Maria Martinez was as a person or as a mother. They had simply made visible to others what Sarah had always known. "Mom," she said as they pulled into their driveway, "I'm proud of you for being a Navy SEAL, but I was proud of you before I knew what that meant, too." Maria smiled, the first completely relaxed expression Sarah had seen on her face since she returned from deployment. "That, Mija, is why you have the heart of a warrior, even if you never put on a uniform. You see people for who they really are, not just what they can prove to others." That evening, Sarah's phone buzzed constantly with messages from classmates. Apologies, questions, and invitations to events she had been excluded from for weeks. She answered some and ignored others, still processing the dramatic shift in her social standing. But the message she treasured most was a simple text from her mother, sent from the next room. "Thank you for never giving up on the truth. You're my hero, too." 3 weeks later, when Mrs. Peterson asked the class to write essays about courage, Sarah wrote about the difference between the courage needed to face enemy fire and the courage needed to stand alone with an unpopular truth. She wrote about her mother, but she also wrote about herself and about the lesson she had learned. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought on foreign soil or in dramatic rescues. Sometimes they're fought in high school hallways and cafeterias, where a teenager refuses to let others rewrite her reality. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't saving lives in combat, but simply refusing to surrender to the lies that others want to believe about you. Sarah submitted her essay with confidence, knowing that this time no one would question her story. Not because it was any more true than before, but because she had finally proven that truth doesn't change based on who believes it. It simply waits, patient and constant, for the right moment to reveal itself to those ready to see it.